Talk a
Joey
little
needs
bit.
to write my LinkedIn bio.
Oh yeah.
You're better than
Oh, I
Claude.
thought you said I need to read it. And I was like, did
No.
I miss something
No,
massive?
you
I
need
was
to
like,
write
fuck,
it.
what did I do? Okay.
You need to
I
write
appreciate it.
You're better than Claude.
Happy to send it over.
Yeah.
I
GPT.
definitely try to be better than AI on a daily basis. So I appreciate
That's all of our goals.
That's every single one of us and every teams that we've ever managed.
Right.
Welcome back to the Top Shelf Outbound Leadership Podcast. Today we've got John Harden, Senior Director of Global Sales Development at Raptor Technologies. He has been leading SDR and sales teams for over 10 years, with a 2.5-year stint at Cisco before joining Raptor Technologies over 6 years ago. So with long stints, scaling different orgs at different stages, he has found a unique ability to lead teams with extremely low turnover rates, with industry-leading turnover rates across his team. So our topic today will be managing hearts and minds, creating buy-in, and preventing turnover on your team. Welcome, John.
Yo, hey, thank you. Excited to be here.
John, happy to have you here. Let's talk about what we're drinking and why, down to the specifics of the ice.
Sure. So we are drinking Bullet Bourbon, 10-year specifically. It's not my daily drink. It's just one small peg up from my daily drink. It's a good stepbrother or stepsister. And you can't see it in mine. I don't think that there's ice remaining in any of y'all's, but I always like 2 shitty ice cubes. And I call them shitty ice cubes because a real ice cube makes a drink cold. A shitty ice cube doesn't. So these are usually like small ice cubes, akin to like what you get at Sonic, but you get 2,000 of them. And it's actually a funny story behind the shitty ice cubes. And that is, my wife and I, we lived in Austin about a decade ago, and we were in a rental, and it came with appliances, including probably a 10-year-old fridge, right? And one time our ice maker broke. So like many folks would do, I went out and I bought those ice trays, right? And that's also when I got into bourbon because I finally had some income. I was working, starting my career, or I guess a few years into it. But the ice trays that I would buy were just like super shitty, right? They weren't good. They weren't those good square ones that you'd have at like your grandma's house. They were just like kind of, I swear it was like the Temu ice trays. And out of this whole ice tray, I might get like 1 or 2 cubes. Right. So I've got this like bourbon thing going on, and then I've got really crappy ice capabilities. And out of an entire 12 grid of ice tray ice, I'd get like 1 or 2 cubes. So it was a big deal when I was done with a work day or like starting my weekend and I had 2 shitty ice cubes to go into my drink. Since then, I've got refrigerators that make ice consistently. But I've always leaned on, hey man, I'm going to have 2 cubes and they can't be too big. They have to be shitty little ice cubes. So there's the story behind it.
It's gorgeous.
Up until like, yeah, super good. Up until like 2 years ago, I was a 1 ice cube guy. And literally like at every bar I would go to, whether it was like a whiskey bar or just like a dive bar, I would always ask for some whiskey with 1 ice cube. Right. And then they'd like, without fail at a dive bar, they'd be like, well, all we have is like really small, like ice chips or whatever. And I'd be like, one's fine. And then, but then they'd be like, oh, like if it was like a nice place, like, oh, do you want one of like the big, like whiskey cubes? I'd be like, great. Like it was just 1, whatever the size was. I just wanted 1. Right? It was no problem.
Right. Right. Well, 2, so 2 doesn't make your drink cold, especially if it's shitty ice, right? Good ice. Yeah. You're going to have a cold drink, but no one wants that. So you get those 2 shitty cubes and it brings your glass just above room temp, right? And I'm not a whiskey guy, but a whiskey guy would probably be like, oh, that's ideal drinking conditions, right? I'm making that part up, but 2 just feels right. It tastes right. The temp is right. So maybe you can now transition to being a 2 shitty cube person, Joey.
Well, you know what also I'm thinking about is, to your point on this, and now we're like getting very scientific into the ice, is like it's less, just like obnoxious than being like a few drops of water, like people are just like, I do it with like 5 drops of water. It's just like 2 pieces of ice and I'm good. And they're like, okay. versus like, can you get out a little dropper, drop a few pieces of ice? Because like it's doing that same thing, right? It's watering it down just a little bit, but it's not making it cold and it's not watering it down too much. So,
or if you're at the bar, you just say, yeah, a few cubes. And when they give you 3, you just kind of fish one out.
and eat it. If you're an ice cruncher
You just
like
eat
me.
it,
Yeah, then you get a little snack.
Yeah.
You get a little snack, then you're back to tonic.
And you're good to
But
go.
that's the story. Yeah. So Bullet Bourbon 10-year with 2 shitty cubes. Can't be good cubes.
Beautiful way to end the week, start the weekend, like you said earlier. Cheers, Joey. Cheers, John. Excited to dive into this topic. So you said, right, industry best, which I think, you know, if you're talking like benchmarks, every time I've seen them, it's usually like, 12, 16 months is usually what they talk about, like an SDR, whether they get promoted, they leave, they get pipped out. But if we're talking longer than that, especially up to 3 years in the SDR role, that's very impressive. And I think I try to think back to like 7, 8 years of managing reps, and there's like 1 or 2 out of probably 70, 80, something like that, that I could say fit into that. And we're still like motivated, which that's the big piece, right? Is like, how do they stay motivated? New blood is really important sometimes in a BDR, SDR org. So how are you doing that? How are you keeping motivating? How are you seeing the revenue impact of them sticking around versus like just cycling through? Would love to hear what you're doing over there.
Mm-hmm. Sure. So it's really a guiding philosophy, right? And you have to think outside of your business because like you guys, I've been through multiple different iterations in terms of stage and growth types of businesses, from Forbes 50 to scrappy stained carpet startups, where they would do dog day Wednesdays and there would literally be dog poop in the office, right? We've been through the gamut. You have to remove yourself from the organization in a sense. And that's not to say like dismiss company values, company mission, super important. But there's that old adage, it's like win hearts and minds, right? A lot of people will say, yeah, I do a good job of that. And I'm sure they might think they do. But the reality is that adage is incorrect. It's not win hearts and minds. It's win hearts to guide minds. And I say that and I mean it because what I've found to be successful for myself and for anyone that's listening, if you want to pick this up, earn a new seller's trust, like earn their trust, win their heart, show them who you are as a person. And assuming you're not a shitty person like shitty ice cubes or shitty ice cubes, then you should do a pretty good job of being authentic and winning over their heart, right? That's the heart element. Once you have that trust, then you as a successful leader, or maybe even a new leader, you can start guiding their minds. It's no different than parenting. In fact, you know, I wrote to you guys on LinkedIn. It's like, I've had a week. The reason I've had a week is we have a 3-week-old, right? So we just had our 3rd kid. And I reference my kids a lot to my team. And the reason I do that, and in conversations or forums like this, is they won't stop when I say stop unless they trust me, right? They won't ride their bike for the first time and like take off knowing that they might fall unless they trust me. So earning over that trust is paramount and precedes allowing you to guide their minds, right? And I think there's that just general misconception. It's like, oh, I got to be a cool manager. I got to be a cool leader. I gotta have the secret sauce. Oh, I'm going to hit the phones every Wednesday and show them that I can book meetings. Well, all of that is great. If they can't trust you as a person, they're not going to take your guidance. And once they trust you, they can start believing in the mad scientist that you have as the leader in between the ears. Happy to drill in more there, but generally speaking, that is the philosophy.
I think that's very in line with like both of our leadership style as well, and couldn't agree with you more. So outside of kind of like letting your team know who you are and what's important to you, the other part of it obviously being like getting to know them, understanding what's important to them. Like day one with a new rep, what are the things that like non-negotiable you need to leave that first week kind of understanding about them?
Yeah. So I've got a guiding principle, professional and personal, right? And that is family and health. And there's reasons that those two are paramount to me that I'm not going to get into. But it is important to understand where they stand on the values of family and health. And health is mental health, health is physical health, spiritual health, you name it. But week one as a leader, if you can kind of gauge who they are, and you don't directly ask, tell me your health history, right? You don't want to violate. There's no HIPAA violations here. You don't want to ask necessarily directly about their family or home life, but you need to tune your ears into picking up cues, right? Who is this person? What makes them tick? Why do they tick? And it's kind of like value selling, right? The benefits will always come back to saving time or saving money or making time, creating time, or creating money. It's the same thing that I've found with new hires or really people in general. It's like all of their motivators, if you drill it down far enough, it's going to come back to improving or conserving health or, building success, building wealth for family or for themselves, right? So it all distills down to those two things, family and health. So to answer your question more directly, Joey, that first week when you're with a new hire, even when you're with a company, right? If you're a new leader and you're getting to know your peers, try to walk away, aside from your tasks, right? What you need to do to succeed. Try to walk away with a gauge of how they interpret this thought of family and health and how their world collides with the concept of family and health.
I love that. I think from a motivation factor, right? Like so many people think it's just money. It's just like progression of their career. But there's so many factors that like I think about, and again, we talk a lot about Chili Piper because that's where Joey and I met, but the like work-life balance, that was like a huge motivator. And I would always tell people that like to start, hey, if you're crushing your goal and you're working from wherever in the world that makes you happy, like that's more important to me than anything else. So like go do what you need to do. And I think that's something that's lost a lot. But so as far as like, again, 3 years sticking around, assuming that career is important from a progression standpoint, how do you understand like, again, health, family, other motivation, time, like what is it that allows them to say like, hey, I'm happy to sit in this seat for 3 years when maybe they see friends or other people getting promoted after a year and a half, and they're like, that's what I want. But
every individual is different, but collectively I've got 9 things and I'm going to rattle them off. So get your pen, jot it down, and then we can dig into any of them. Right. And in fact, this is something that I wrote one of those LinkedIn articles, like after a few bourbons, probably almost a decade ago. So it's still there on my LinkedIn. But there's 9 steps, and I'll just go through them if you want, right? And then we can drill into any of them. But first, tell them how it is, right? Don't sugarcoat, right? Tell them how it is, whether that's their role, their fit in the company, their performance, you name it. Tell them how it is. Communicate their value, right? Let them know their worth inside of those 4 walls. You've got to be relatable. You've got to have some type of common bond, some connection with your people. You also have to be very, very realistic, right? If somebody is not cut out for this after you've got a good enough sample size to measure, then you need to be realistic with that individual, and you have to be honest, right? Create a desire, right? A motivating element, right? Create a hunger. Provide a routine, right? Going back to the parenting element, like have a routine that they can walk in every day and know what they're getting into and then perform the duties that they're responsible for. What is that? 6, be approachable. Okay. Make yourself a safe place. SDRing oftentimes sucks. It really does. Cold calling sucks. I've made 100,000 in my life and I still get butterflies every dollar I make, right? So create your kind of self to be a safe place. Along the lines of like be approachable and providing a routine, these all kind of mesh with like parenting. Have the I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed, right? You are there to steward them towards success. You should not be there to get mad at them. Your chain is only as strong as the weakest link. So if someone is the weak link, you can't be a jerk to them. right? You've got to build up that individual and make yourself, again, approachable, and then also let them know that you're not upset with them. We are our own biggest critic. And the last one that I have in my 9 steps, it's called like the 9 steps to early buy-in. The last one is to have fun, because frankly, when it's all said and done, and this kind of goes back to the family and health thing, the stuff I don't really want to get into, but when it's all said and done, my tombstone better not freaking say like John Harden, Raptor employee, right? It better say like husband, father, son, brother, guide, mentor, whatever, like the things that matter. So have fun and recognize that, look, these jobs are great and important and it pays the bills and you help people, but let's have fun doing it. So those are like the 9 principles that I live by, Matt, that help me keep a rep from, leaving in 6 months to sticking around for 2.5 years.
There's so many principles to live by,
right.
And all super good. I go back to so Matt hired me in my first SDR role, and promoted me into my first leadership role. And one of the moments I think back to that made me want to get into leadership was I maybe a month or 2 into the role was so excited by it, so motivated, maybe even too much so from a manager's perspective. And I remember it was a Friday, and I was telling him I was just talking about what was going to happen the next month and all this stuff. And he was I remember him being hey, but also live your life, Yeah. And I remember him saying that and being wow, that's so cool that he just said that.
But Joey, I want to kind of move back off of the work-life balance, right? Because while yes, work-life balance is really important, it's also become kind of stigmatic in sales leadership. I'll give you a great example, right? I'm in, as I'm sure you guys are, many sales leaders groups on LinkedIn or Reddit or you name it. And people complain, it's, oh my God, the first and only question they asked was about work-life balance. I'm going to reject this candidate so fast, right? I think certainly post-pandemic, many organizations, I hesitate to say most, right? But many organizations have kind of ingrained the work-life balance in literally that, you are going to work from home. I mean, for scheduling this, for instance, it's I only go to the office these days. That's the same here, right? So by default, it kind of forces that work-life balance. Work-life balance exists even if you're a trash collector that's picking up bins 6 days a week. Work-life balance is real and it's important and it does exist. But what I'm referring to isn't so much oh, do you have the bandwidth to be able to, not look at Teams for a day? Every single person, the trash collector, they have that bandwidth, but it's about a willingness to do it, right? It's a willingness to let the life part in the work-life balance happen. So I think it's important to separate work-life balance from lifing, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah. And as you're saying that, I hear the baby crying in the background, which is again, Joey didn't mention it yet, but the fact that you're on this 3 weeks after having another child, cheers to you for that. Because I was saying earlier how we had some other people who were expecting, and we had our first son 9 months ago. And I think it took Joey, 4 or 5 weeks before we did another episode. And I was like, oh my gosh, now you're here 3 weeks later on a podcast.
Appreciate that.
So
congrats to you. Is that number
fun.
1?
Yeah, number 1. And it's super fun. And I think, again, being a parent, and I'm sure you've heard this, Joey, if when you have children, you're going to hear the same thing. When you're a really good sales dev leader, kind of tangent a little bit, but a lot of people are you're going to be a great parent or a great, father, because it's kind of similar where you're talking about tell them the value, create desire, be realistic. All these things go into, not just creating good sales reps, but creating good people. And I think a lot of it is just super relevant. And to tie it back to a nutrition standpoint, you think about it as a parent, there's the kids who grew up in households where dude, I can't wait to get the hell out of this house. Yeah. Probably a bad manager. The person who, had a parent or parents that just they adored, they're my best friends. I would do anything. I'd run through a wall, I'll do whatever. And I feel it is very kind of a similar, they're parallel in a lot of places. So,
well, you nailed it with like the bad manager piece, right?
yeah.
Many years ago, this was like the shtick on LinkedIn. It's like every creator would post stuff about this, and it's like employees, the number one reason they leave is their boss, their direct supervisor, right? It's not the pay, it's not the culture, it's not the work-life balance that we just talked about. It's their boss, right? And I guess there's kind of like a breaking point with SDR and BDR or XDR, right? And that breaking point is usually a year and a half. Many SDRs or BDRs will come in and they say like, hey, look, I'm going to give this 18 months. If I'm not at an AE role by then or a seller role by then, I'm out. And it truly is that parental kind of like, hey, your leader does matter to stretch you from 18 months to 24 or to 30. Not to say that my people are my children. They're so far from it. But you're right. It's like, just as people will leave a bad leader, they'll stick around for a good one. Yeah.
Absolutely. So one of the things you mentioned before this call was treating your employees like life veterans. And I think something we've talked about a lot on the podcast is how easily SDR teams can kind of be like disrespected within the org, how easily SDRs can be disrespected within the org. And obviously the importance of that not being the case. But curious to hear more about what that means to you, like treating them like life veterans, especially when it gets to like 2 years in the role. Like, how does that approach play in and get them to continue to want to work in that role with you?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I'll answer that. But first, I want to let your audience know this. Like, it fires me up, and I felt myself emote, which is very much like a Gen Z term, right? I felt myself emote when you said SDRs are largely disrespected, right? The bottom of the totem pole. Can't stand that. The reality is, in most organizations, the one I'm in currently is the same. In most organizations, if all of the SDRs on the same day quit, that business would shut down 6 months later, right? So when anybody says, oh, you're just an SDR, right? Or worse, a seller might say, oh yeah, they are my SDR, like claiming ownership. It's like totally false. Without that then you're not hitting Q2 and Q3, right? So that's incredibly frustrating. And that is kind of something that we as leaders in SDR need to crack. And we can, scream from the mountaintops, but we have to reinforce it through actions, right? But to going back to your question, when it really boils down to kind of perception and how to create that longevity and what skills matter and what SDRs are really going to take that next step, that next leap, I think it's important for us as leaders to level set and recognize that if you're an SDR, right, you do carry value, you do carry significant weight, and it is incumbent on the team around you, including and not limited to your leader, to let you realize that potential, right? A great example is this. I've had, like y'all, I've probably had 1,000 people work for me at various points. And there are people who just aren't ready. They just don't feel ready, right? They don't feel ready to sell. They don't feel ready to explore other opportunities. They know for the most part what they'll make month over month, right? There's some variance. And they feel like they need to grow. And it is our responsibility to nurture each individual and to let them grow at their own speed and to give them and equip them with what it takes to succeed. There's like a triangle, right? An equilateral triangle, 3-sided. One side is sales skills, one side's product knowledge, and one side's work ethic. The glory of that triangle is the SDR entirely owns the work ethic piece, right? The product knowledge is a two-way street, right? We share it. They come to us saying, hey, I need help with this, and we provide the resources. And then the sales skills is entirely on us as leaders. Like, you have to assume that every new hire is at the same spot, and that is ground zero. No knowledge of sales, right? If they can commit their half, right, which is asking for help and putting in the work, and we can commit our half, sales skills and providing the resources to meet them for that product knowledge bit, then you will have a well-rounded SDR. You won't, that equilateral triangle is very difficult to shift into an obtuse or an acute triangle. It becomes just a larger equilateral triangle. So, Joey, in a very roundabout way, I think first, SDRs need to be appreciated, right? We do a lot. But beyond that, growth is something that happens at the SDR's pace. And all we can really do is equip them and help them realize their potential.
Yeah, I think that's a good segue into another question. Completely agree with all of that. And we talked about pace actually earlier today. Some people 6-12 months, they're ready for the next thing. Sometimes it takes 3 years. Sometimes it takes longer. You mentioned like the grass sometimes being greener and like helping them leave the business. And I think that's a really fascinating concept that, again, we've had other conversations about growth plans. And I've had I think, end of spectrums where one, Chili Piper, you're great, you crush it, you can move in an AE role within 6 to 9 months. And I had another role where it was so difficult to get people into the AE role for vast reasons. But like, what does it look like from, kind of like a business impact standpoint? Like, is there a silver lining, in your opinion, from a business standpoint of, being that person to let people leave your business for other opportunities versus, the other roundabout way of like, you try anything you can to hold on to somebody, even though realistically you should let them go.
Right. It's a give and take, right? It's a double-edged sword. So on one edge, it's, I want this top performer because they're producing, they're helping the team hit goal. They're a good teammate, right? They're helping their peers. And on the other side, it's, I know as a leader, we don't have headcount baked in for this person to advance for 6 or 9 months, right? And that is a dilemma that I think every SDR leader in a growing company feels at some point, right? Sometimes it's magnified. Sometimes it's like kind of a trickle. It's, oh, yeah, well, nothing now, but 6 months later, a role pops up. If you are sincere about your employees' best interests, right? If you as a leader are sincere about their growth, then you also have to be comfortable helping them explore opportunities outside of your business, right? If you are only sincere with their growth and with their development within your business, then guess what? You're not sincere at all. And I think it's important, if you've got a very, very, very skilled sales rep and your job as a leader is genuinely to help them develop and grow, you have to level set with yourself and you have to say, look, that development and growth, as much as I want it to be here at my business, might not be here at my business, right? Now, as much as that would hurt you as a leader to see a top performer go because there's no openings for them, you have to recognize that their departure, with or without your help, is actually a positive sign for you. Because that means you're fostering an environment where people, again, to go full circle, feel like they trust you and you trust them.
Yeah.
And you're guiding them and they're acknowledging that. So, Matt, to your point, like, it is a kind of a radical concept. It's like telling people to leave your business. No, you don't tell them to. But if they have that itch and it's a real itch, help them scratch it. Because guess what? Our jobs don't stop at our current companies. There will be a day where that person might work for you again, or hell, you might work for them.
Yeah. Okay, cool. That's a great way to kind of pull it all together. Cause that was my thing, is like, it's one of those things, you're throwing out the benefit of what this does way down the line. Like it isn't something that you're going to see. And again, from a business impact standpoint, yeah, it sucks. You've now lost a top performer, but it does gain the trust, I think, of your team, of your future team. And then it helps you future, yourself, whether it is,
being real with people is like the golden rule in SDR leadership, and that's why it's my first of my 9 key buy-ins. Like, shoot them straight, tell them how it is. Like, be real with people.
Tell them how
like,
it
hey,
is.
I want you to grow. I want you to grow here at this business. But if you can't, I'm going to help steward you elsewhere.
100%. Last question before we wrap up.
Yeah.
Something we ask everyone who comes on this show. Sure. Outside of work, what is one thing you want to accomplish in your life?
Now that I have a family, my answer can no longer be cut up my ID and go live in Alaska and not be reachable. One thing I'd like to accomplish is to leave a legacy, and that's not a professional legacy by any stretch. Like, I want to live 2 generations past me. As silly as that sounds, like, I want my kids' to tell stories about me, though I will be in the dirt 30, 40 years. And I think the best way to do that is to just, similar to what we talked about, like, let them know my heart, right? Like, give good lessons that are infallible, like, that's dude. You had to finish with that, man.
That's a beautiful answer. Thank you for finishing with that.
Why did you ask that question to Ed Norton? You should have hit him with that one.
No, the question to Ed Norton was very much, how do you like Austin?
Thank you.
It was sick.
It's to leave a legacy, man. And legacies for some people is monetary, and hopefully that's what I leave behind as well. But I want my kids to talk about me, right? And I think that's the kind of definition of impact.
For sure. Love it. It's beautiful.
Love it. So much good stuff today. Thank you so much for joining us, talking through all of this. To everyone listening, thank you for making it to the end here. If you enjoyed it, like, subscribe, reach out, let us know what you liked, didn't like, or let John know directly. You can find him on LinkedIn. Just give him the feedback straight to him. Thank you all. Thank you for listening. John, again, thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time.
Matt, thanks so much.